Someone told me over 200% gappers were bad, and I was like, what?
What should a trader be worried about or be aware of that they may face?
That and sometimes patterns fail. You got to find out at what point has it gone too far.
For someone to be thinking, I want to be more systematic, what must be systematized?
All the work comes when the market's closed. What's working these 2 years or the next 2 years might not work the third year from now.
You keep saying you avoided max losses. That makes me beg the question, like, is every time you take a loss, is it max loss?
When you're also looking for a pattern, basically do the same exact trade over and over and over, the same way again and again. And if you do that same trade every time, you're looking at the end of the year to be very profitable.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today, I have a very special guest and friend of mine who has been trading for over 5 years. And he is such a unique trader because he's been trading successfully by really close to automating his entire process to the point to where he's now looking for a way to build an algo to just automate it completely. And everyone, welcome to the show, Evan Shunk. Evan, welcome, my man.
Thanks for having me, man. Always good to be back here on Be the Story. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I love that you're here, man. I love talking to you all the time. You always deliver some great information and you're always just real about it. So I really appreciate that. So I wanted to really dive deep into the idea of, let's say it's 2024 and you're new, right?
Okay.
And you're starting today, but you're Evan and you have history. You have 5 years, but you have to start over, right? You still have all the knowledge. How would you
Yeah.
start now? You have a small account, let's just say $5,000, if 5,000, whatever you want to say, it doesn't
Right.
really matter. But how would you start your learning process and how would you actually
Right.
attack this market?
I would still start it the same exact way that I did, which is you need to find a foundational education. And look, the only way to do that is you got to find a chat room online that is reliable, is trustworthy, and gives you a good trading education foundation. There is a lot of fake ones out there, we all know, but there are a lot of real ones out there. And you need a foundation to start your trading journey and education for sure. I would say just number one.
Hmm.
You need someone to open the door for you, right?
Yep.
Teach you the basics, give you the training wheels, and then and I guess the second thing I would say after you have that, you learn all the basics, you learn all that. You need hopefully a trader, in the community that is pointing out, a pattern to you. For example, how about big gap ups on the day, right? A lot of traders like to go and trade those. So once you figure out where they're looking at, if it's a big gap pattern, maybe it's a first red day pattern, or maybe it's what shortened into resistance pattern. Once you're able to see where they're looking to find their edges, uh, that would be step number two. And once you can do that and you can see where they're looking, then you need to analyze it with data on paper. So you need to gather as many of those patterns as you can because sure, they're all one pattern, but each one of them has variability. But so overall, though, they are still the same pattern. And once you get enough sample sizes of the exact same pattern and analyzing it, cross references with different variables, and getting it on paper and seeing your edge on paper first of what you want to do with that pattern. That would be step number three. And step number four would be use some money and try to attempt to trade that pattern.
Yep. You know, I want to dive into some of these things because the first step you mentioned, there's some real rooms out there. There's some rooms and you just got to be careful. What would your advice be in terms of making sure you're in a good room? Like, because there's some people out there who, what should they be asking themselves? What's the check mark they should be thinking about to help? What helped you basically find a real room?
I just Googled, I found multiple good reviews. The first one I found was Tim Sykes.
Yep.
He had a great foundation in there. Tim Grittani was in there. Even Dux was in there at that time. And there was a lot of good traders in that chat room throwing out good information. Roland was in there. And then after that, I went to Investors Underground. And
Yep.
Nate's amazing. And that guy is giving out so much value in education. And then from there, I joined Roland and Dux's room. And then I learned a lot there. And so I've been into And then I went to Verma's room after that. So I've been in the five different rooms.
Yep.
I spent probably $12,000 on education in and of itself. And
You
then
know, it
yeah,
did you continue to do that as you were like when you as you became profitable, did you stop or did you continue to do that? Like
I
just curious.
continued to do it throughout 2020, which was my best profitable year ever. And I think I did it 2021 as well. 2022, I kind of just I stopped. I was like, okay,
Yep.
I'm good. Uh, if anything, their rooms were just really good alerts, like having more eyes on popping up what stocks are ticking it. So it's really good for like a watch list almost. But other than that, I was fine on my own. I stopped paying for them.
Interesting. I love what you
Yeah,
said. It's kind of like a watch list, kind of like a little alerts to just look at
yeah.
other stocks that other people are
And
watching,
ideas.
right?
They're always throwing out trade ideas live time. So,
Yep.
that's also helpful as well. Maybe, oh, that's a great idea. I like it. I'm going to do it too. Sometimes I do that.
Absolutely. And you mentioned just the whole idea of, you're in somewhere, or just find a location where you can learn, right? And then
Yeah.
find someone that you can learn from or build a
Yeah.
relationship with.
Hmm.
Now, talking about that, like how did you do that? Because some people find it difficult to find that person to connect with. How would you suggest they do that?
Repeat that to find a mentor.
Yeah, I guess a mentor. I didn't know if that's what you wanted to call it. Like
Yeah,
whenever
okay.
but yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
I guess the gurus are somewhat their mentors, online mentors. Yeah, I would. I mean, first I would say don't stop at one chat room. I would try multiple. They all have different trading styles. You're not going to know which one really resonates with you the most. So I would try multiple, learn from all of them, and then your own, style and the way you trade will come about from that.
And I guess what I was trying to really ask is more so of you mentioned then find someone that you can kind of like pick up that like I thought you meant when you find someone you mean like someone you connect with on a daily basis or talk to about trading. Is that what you
Oh,
meant
like
earlier?
no, but that is also a good thing to do as well. I did that. Build a community. Like I have my brother, so it was great. We
Yep.
were always, working together. We're a team, finding things, sharing our edges, sharing what we find. We all analyze the same data, but you'll be shocked of how one person analyzes compared to how you analyze. You'll pick up different things. It's really interesting. My brother finds things I don't find. I find things he doesn't find. And also just seeing in the trading world how different everyone analyzes things. Like someone told me over 200% gappers were bad, and I was just like, what? What are you talking about? I don't see that. So it's just interesting how different analyses can be. But yes, it's important to find a knit team, build a community, find a friend in the chat room, someone you could work with, bounce edges and ideas off each other. Having a team helps your growth as well.
Hey, we wouldn't be able to do these face-to-face interviews if it wasn't for our sponsor, Cobra Trading. So if you could just give them a few seconds of your time, we'd really appreciate it. Cobra Trading is the go-to broker for day traders and short sellers. And I'm not the only one saying this. In fact, Benzinga awarded Cobra Trading as the go-to broker for short selling. They have a heavy focus on direct market access order routing, so you have the fastest execution. They have some of the best locate prices and availability. They also have amazing customer service. I've experienced many different brokers, and it's why I use them every single day and why I'm proud to have them as our sponsor. Sign up now by clicking the Be the Trader referral link below and earn 1 free month of software with Cobra and 25% off all commissions. Now let's get back to the show. And but then you also mentioned the whole idea of, see all these patterns that everyone's talking about, and then find the one you like, and then
Yeah,
just focus there and
yeah.
gather
Track
data.
data on it, gather data on it.
How would
See
you
your
do
edge
that?
on paper. Okay, how would you do that? So I guess, for example, let's just do with, one of the patterns that I like to trade the most is
Sure.
giant gap ups, right? Um, you would start with getting price data. So you want the open, the high, the low, the close. But then you also want to have check out the market cap. You want to check out the float. Float and market cap can change the success rate of the pattern. Um, and so you have to find out what market cap do I want to cut it off at, right? Or what float maybe is it too volatile, or does it make it too much room for error, too much slippage? If it's like an under 1 mil float, likes to do a lot of holds, maybe you want to avoid that. You can check. So you cross-reference all these variables, and then you want to test your entries and your exits. You could just start with simple basic open and close, see if
Hmm.
there's something there. At least that will give you a directional edge of where that pattern wants to go on the day. For example, giant gap ups have a pretty high probability of closing below the open. So right there is a directional edge of where that stock wants to go. However, they don't always all close below the open. It only takes one to just wipe you out. So you got to find out at what point has it gone too far and I need to cut my losses. Um, so you check that out. But once you get enough data on paper and you're able to cross reference it with your float, your market cap, test different entries and exits, um, and you can even factor in news. Sometimes news has an effect on it. Um, so whatever. And there's a lot more other variables. You could
Yeah.
test 100 SMA. You could test in moving averages with it. You could test a Fibonacci with your pattern.
Would
Uh,
you say be very flexible and like don't just listen to what you're saying here and write everything down, test all that only? Like, would you say
yes,
just how would you suggest? Because I know people are going to hear you say things and they're going to be like,
yeah,
okay, let me do exactly that. Like, is that what you're saying, or are you more so kind of giving? I'll let you say it.
yeah. I'm saying exactly that. Test open. You could test open to close data. Like there's multiple entries you could test. I'm just giving the basic open to close data. And then literally have like maybe your gap up needs to gap up a certain percentage. Well, what is that line? So maybe you'll get a sample of like 300 gappers that are gapping up at least 50%, and then test what is it doing from open to close?
Hmm.
What's the average thing these things are spiking? Does the market cap reduce the win rate of the pattern? These are just all different questions you can ask yourself when analyzing this pattern.
I know someone's thinking, well, great. Now I got to go back and look at all the trades I've done over the years. Or they're thinking, great, I just started trading. What am I going to do, Evan? I got to go and just find these charts on my own on Thinkorswim and just zoom back
Mm-hmm.
out in the chart to find every time this happened and then, find those data points. How would you
Mm-hmm.
suggest they do that?
Right now you got Spikey. You can pull a lot of data from. Flash Research. You can test a lot of things from. So there's lots of third-party platforms that you can get your data from. Um, Eventually, I might open something up. You can get it from me, but I'm not there yet. It's a work in
Okay.
progress. I'm working on
Hey,
some
you
stuff.
heard, I heard it here first. You know what I'm saying? I heard it here first. That's all I'll say.
I'm still close though. I'm not open, so don't message me for data.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Oh, you probably gonna regret saying that.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. But you know, I really am curious. You filter all this data, you figure
Mhm.
out there's an edge. Is
Yeah.
it that simple? Like you find your edge and then you just start putting money behind it, like you said, and it's easy to do, or like
No,
what
because
should a trader be worried about or be aware of that they may face when they do that next step of putting money behind it?
the emotional volatility happens. Every system, eventually gets a drawdown, and the drawdowns can be pretty emotional, depending on how volatile you make your system. I can make my system really not volatile and it's pretty smooth, but what I give up is a lot of profit. The profit won't compound nearly as much if I'm, risking so little. So, it's give and take. What can your emotions handle? I'm pretty risk tolerant, I would say. Traders would see how much I'm risking on my account and they would think I'm nuts, for sure. But it all depends on what you can handle and what works for you. Um, that and sometimes patterns fail. Data changes. What's working these 2 years or the next 2 years might not work the third year from now, or it could just stop mid-year. Right? Pattern can fail all the time, so you need to learn how to what to do when that comes about.
What do you do?
Well, there's three ways. Essentially, you can test the history of the pattern, and you can test and observe the biggest drawdown that it's ever had. Right. So as long as it's never draw down further than it has in history, you don't really have to worry too yet. That's pretty normal, right? According to the history of the pattern, it can draw down this much. But let's say it draw down further than it's ever drawn down before. Well, now you're in new waters. A wait
Mm.
and see approach might need to be necessary. So you might put your foot off the gas pedal, give it a break, breathing room. Let it see. Let's see what happens after that. Give it some time. Another thing you could do is you could test the profit's equity curve, which is essentially testing the pattern's equity curve,
Mm.
which is essentially testing the pattern's profit curve, the
Mm.
history of, if I'm doing this every single time, um, is it going to like you're testing the profit curve of,
Of the pattern
oh yeah,
itself.
that reminds me as well. And when you're also looking for a pattern, you're looking to make a trade, basically do the same exact trade over and over and over, the same way again and again. Um, until but and then it doesn't matter if it works every time, but what it looks like at the end of the year
Mm.
is essentially the type of patterns you're looking for. And then another way to know if your pattern's really like messing up and going haywire, test the profit equity curve, and if it goes below the moving average, sorry, the pattern's equity curve, if it goes below the profit's moving average, that could be a red flag that it's acting up, it's not normal. Maybe don't trade that pattern again until the pattern's profit curve gets back above the moving average.
Do you ever just discard it forever, or do you just look at it later every couple of months? What do you
Yeah,
do? I'm just
I've
curious.
a lot of times what I do is when the pattern messes up, I'll add a little bit more discretion to it. Not everyone's comfortable doing that. I've been trading for a while, so I'm okay adding some discretion here and there in my pattern. It saved me a lot last year, and I'll downsize if the pattern's really messing up. I don't mind downsizing, and I don't mind, I guess, overriding my system, you could say, and maybe getting out a little early because I don't like the way it looks.
Gotcha. So, what classifies you for the most part? And I get that sometimes you will be discretionary when it calls
Mm.
for it, but for the most part, for someone to be thinking, okay, I want to be more systematic, what must be systematized to make sure that you are at least thinking the right way? Because again, this is a new trader, right, who doesn't really
Yeah,
know what that really means. So, what would that look like?
you have to have predefined rules, predefined entries, predefined exits, predefined stop losses. Everything is predefined before you enter the trade, your entire plan. And you do that, all the work comes not in market hours. All the work is coming when the market's closed. You're working out your predefined plan for the specific pattern and you're doing the same trade every time. And if you do that same trade every time, you're looking at the end of the year to be very profitable.
Now, you mentioned some people might look at the way you risk and it'd be insane.
Yeah.
Are you willing to share what that percentage is in terms of your
Uh,
account?
yeah, let's say, I start with a 60K bankroll, let's
Yep.
say this year, uh, and I'll risk 20 to 25% of that bankroll per trade.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone knows, and y'all should know this. Like, period. We don't give advice. Period. So don't listen to
Yeah.
anything. We're just here to share our own experiences. But in general,
Yeah.
that's a lot of risk.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
yeah.
but you have an edge
Sure.
that you've been doing for a
Yeah.
couple of years. You know what you're doing. You want to keep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it depends on the success rate of the pattern. That's my best pattern, right?
Yep.
If I'm doing one of my other patterns, maybe it's just like, 12.5%. But still people think that's crazy too.
Yep.
So,
But if you
yeah.
know your numbers,
Yeah.
and you're confident in the execution of you making sure that you pull the trigger every time the exact same way every single time, then I can see
Hmm.
that. But I'm curious though, because you mentioned that you're not full systematic, like you don't have an algo pulling the buttons, pushing the buttons
Right.
for you. You still push the buttons. How do you deal with the emotional side? Like, do you ever look back at your equity curves and compare them to the perfect execution simulation of that year and see a huge
Oh yeah.
divergence, or is it very
Yeah.
close? Like, I'm just curious.
No, it's on paper it's always better. Always.
What's better?
Um on paper. It looks
Oh, okay.
better. Like it would
As
look
if the
better if I had a
system did it.
robot, if a system did it. Yeah,
Yep.
usually. Except last year. Last year might have been the first time I maybe beat my system. Maybe at the end of the year. But that's not normal. Maybe that's a continuing trend, I hope. But usually my system does do better than my discretion. But I
Is
beat it
it like a
last time.
dramatic difference, like a 10% gap or
Well,
thirty
yeah, because there's
percent?
always slippage involved, so you're never gonna. That's why when you're testing your
Right.
patterns profit curve, any system, I always put like a 5% um, decrease per trade. What accounts for borrows and accounts for my slippage. Um, and that gives me a much more realistic representation of what I'm hoping to expect by the end of the year.
So you're not perfect. I get it. Yep.
No, that and following your rules, I break them all the time. Like, I'm supposed to get at the open on this trade, and I'm just like, no, this thing's gonna spike for sure, and it just does the exact opposite, tank right away. I'm sitting there chasing like 30 cents down. So
And
you
you're
you
like,
really have
I,
to be, yeah. It's like you got to be a robot almost. So that's why even on some of my patterns, I'm thinking about making an algo out of it.
hmm.
Yeah.
Do you, what's been the biggest challenge though in terms of switching to an algo? Like I'm sure you're going through that right now. Like, has there been a real
Yeah.
big challenge, or does it seem very simple right now, or how's that looking?
Well, no, I mean, I don't know how to make an algo. I don't know how to code. I don't know how to do any of that.
No, but
But I
when you
haven't,
find
yeah.
someone like
Yeah.
explaining that to them to code
Yeah. Well,
it.
my buddy Calvin, my team, he's a trader as well. So he knows the whole language. So when I speak to him, it's common language. He knows what I'm talking about for everything. So when you have someone on your team that can code and trade, you work together and it's easy. Well, it's a lot of work for him. He's got to build the algo,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
right, it's easy to communicate. What
yeah,
you need to build. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, I'm just curious here, Evan, because I know you've probably completely evolved since the last time I spoke with you, which is like 2 years ago, I believe, on my
right.
show. I think we are in Vegas, and that's when I had you and your brother, and you kind of you taught your brother, basically showed him some things, and then he kind of took off. Are you guys still like similar in terms of y'all trade the exact same patterns or setups? And if so, is y'all's divergence like? I'm just curious if you've noticed a difference in y'all's own trading if y'all trade the same thing.
Yeah, no, I mean we trade 90% of the same stuff. That's it. 10% differences. Like he might like to use give when it comes to gray areas of patterns. Like let's say you want your gap to be 50%, and it gaps 49.99. He might take that and just count it. He might give,
Yep.
but I won't. I think you got to have a line, and so stuff like that.
That
Um,
surprises me. I would think he would be more like, I mean, no,
yeah,
you do cut it off. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I cut it
Gotcha.
off. Yeah, he gives more. He tries to make the system take into account gray areas. I don't do that. He also might be more willing to trade smaller floats than me. Um, and things like that. But other than that, we're pretty much trading the same stuff. Yeah.
Do y'all have the same risk tolerance?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, do you? Oh,
He,
cool.
I'd
Cool.
say he might have a little more than me risk tolerance. Yes.
Oh,
Him,
yeah.
Chris. Yeah.
Oh,
he
man.
he can be pretty robotic. I think he can be more robotic than me.
Okay. I think because
Yeah.
he learned really just that way instead
He
of
learned.
going,
That's how he
you were a
learned. That's how he
discretionary
started.
trader first before you
Yes.
switch.
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Do you think it is possible to become profitable in 6 months? Like if you're a new trader coming out of the gate, like brand new?
It's. I highly doubt it. I'd say it's very rare. I'd say you're gonna definitely lose your money. Um, you're gonna be on your bed just wanting to cry one day with how badly the market just hit you. It's
That's
probably the
personal
truth.
experience right there.
Yeah.
Hey, that's personal for me. Hey, any
Yeah.
real trader will tell you, bro. If you, that's everyone.
Yeah. So I'd say no, but there's rare occasions, every now and then a Dux comes around and gets profitable in less than a year. So,
Yep. But far and few in between. I mean, you've been doing this for
right.
5 years. I'm sure you've seen people come and go. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Their
Yep.
Twitter gets really quiet. Yeah. I'm starting this. I've been here long enough to start noticing it now. Yeah,
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
yeah,
We're about the same experience in terms of like how long we've been in this world. And so
right.
like I think I noticed that too. Like I'm about six
Hmm.
years in and I'm like, man, this is crazy. Some people I don't know anymore or people who just disappeared. And
Right.
it really changes perspective on how hard this game is because
Yeah,
some of them I knew who were profitable, very consistent and did it for a
yeah,
living, very good living for years and then didn't anymore. So
right.
it just showed me like I saw just a variety of from like the quick winners and then disappear, and then like the long like winners who win for a long period of time and then disappear.
Right.
And it kind of just puts some realism in trading and like man, you got to really respect this game 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you
It's exhausting
ever
sometimes.
disrespected the game and got paid and you had to pay for it?
um, the opposite. I disrespected the game twice and got insanely lucky twice.
Oh,
uh, yeah, I remember it was 2020. I said the story before. It's I don't know if I said it on here, but ACY. I was just shorting and I was only in like 2K shares. It wasn't that crazy from the size that I'm used to, and I was shorting at maybe $11 or something, and then it just started going up against me, and I'm like, I'll give it some room. Let's see what happens, and then next thing you know, I think it went to what did it do? It went like all the way to like $40 a share. Maybe like 35, but I was down 50K at the top of the haul. And but the thing was, I could have cut so many times. I could have cut it at 15. I could have cut it at 20. I could have cut it at 25. I could have cut it at 30. And here I am sitting there. Now it's at 30 and I'm down 50K. I was just complete deer in headlights. And I just kept saying, it's going to come back down. It's going to come back down. I know, part of that, there was some, truth behind it. It was the classic skip halt. It's just on air and it's going to come crashing, but when will it come crashing? Will I lose my whole account before that? I don't know. Probably. It could have gone to 100 for all I know. And I got saved. Pending news came out, crashed all the way back down to like 14, got out immediately, took like a 6K loss, and shut my laptop and just went to bed. Just like took a break. I'm like, I'm done.
uh,
So,
that's terrifying.
yeah, that happens. It's going to probably happen. It will happen to you if you were short selling. It's just a matter of time and when. It'll
A
happen
deer
to
in
you
the
at
headlights
least
will
once.
happen. Yep,
Yeah.
at least once. I used to think it wasn't going to happen to me, and it happened to me. So,
Yeah.
a deer in the
It wasn't until the
headlights.
second time, yeah, that I finally I cut. I respect my stop no matter what. Even I'm out. I don't give it any wiggle room. I'm just market order. I'm done.
Dude, because
Yeah.
it could take you out of the game. It could take you
Yeah.
out of
I
the game.
market order. I don't even do limit stops. They're all just market. Just I don't
Just
care
get
if
me
I
out.
just get me out. That's
Don't give
it.
me a reason to think I
Yeah.
don't want to get out. You know, like
Right.
just
Yeah. Like
get
a
me
fake
out.
stuff move and then another rip candle. Like I'm not even gonna mess with it.
Oh, that's terrible. I want to know real quick before we start to wrap this up, Evan. What would you say have been the top three lessons that you've learned last year?
Last year was testing when you're testing your patterns. Concentrate on time being a strong variable to concentrate on. You don't want to see your pattern working only 1 or 2 years. You want to see your pattern working consistently for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, or 4 years, depending on when that pattern started to become a pattern. Because you go back to 2014, there's not a lot of gappers then, right? So you're not going to find much. But maybe gappers really started to get going maybe 2018. Um, so that's one. Concentrate on time being a factor, consistently working. Another lesson I learned, I'd say, is I mean, this is not what I learned last year, but respect your stops, especially if you're a system trader. If you don't, I can know if you'll be a successful system trader just depending on if you stop out every time where you're supposed to. If I see any wiggle, you just giving it like even a couple minutes after your stop, that's already just asking to get hit. That was my biggest one. Was time.
That's fine.
Yeah,
maybe there's two main ones, and that's totally fine.
yeah.
You mentioned earlier flash research and spike heat, and it made me think of this question that I remember to ask now, and that is, with all of this information flooding the market, flash research, dilution tracker, so forth, have you found edge to be diminishing or changing?
It's a good question, and I still don't know. People will swear that it is. I mean, maybe. Or it's just data changing. It could be. The short side's really crowded. Um, I do believe that it's important to protect your edge, but some patterns are pretty timeless. Like gappers, big gappers, I think it's a timeless pattern. I haven't seen them never not work. It's just they go through cycles. Sometimes they get really volatile and really blow people up, make them never want to trade them again. And at those moments, that's exactly the time when they start working again. It seems that the market makers are always ahead of the game, I guess you could say, or just the ones that are doing the ones that are more in control of these patterns, I'd say, um, know exactly when. Like for example, in December for big gappers, right? The biggest drawdown ever for gappers was in November, December that I've ever seen historically on paper. Um, and I wonder how many people stopped playing them because they all started working again. So,
Hmm.
and that's exactly when, so right when everyone's not wanting to play them anymore is when they start working again. And then there was just nice fades all through early January, just nonstop for 2 weeks. Everything was tanking red even. Um, and how many people were actually in there because they were so distraught from the big drawdown they dealt with in December. Um, so there's things like that, but they always have cycles, but they still consistently work, but maybe they get a little more volatile. And does the edge stop working? I'm still waiting to see. I don't know. I've seen patterns fail though and stop working. Is that from edge erosion or just a market change? Uh, I don't know how to answer. I don't know the answer to that question. I think you can make an argument both ways.
Cool.
But if you really found something special, I think it's important to protect that edge. What if it's really as good as you think it is? Why would you hand it out?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Because Evan's about to hand out the bet. I'm just kidding. So look, man, you mentioned something too, though, that was interesting to me, and that was the cycles of the gappers. Because
Yeah.
I know if everyone's watching this, and a lot of people are small cap traders too, and they're probably like, "Oh
Hmm.
yeah, I remember that December, November, that sucked."
Yeah.
Did you go through? Did you stick through the cycle, or did you pull out? Like they're probably asking themselves, "Did you know the cycle? How do you play the cycle? Or are you just staying
Yeah.
in it, just knowing it's a cycle?"
So what I would do is I would always I stick through it. Me and my brother have been good about sticking through it. But luckily for me in December, November, a few of those nasty ones were under a 1 mil stock. And I don't trade under 1 mil stocks. I just won't do it. Um, so I avoided maybe one or two max losses right there. And then another one, I discretionally got out uh, because I thought the float was inaccurate. Everything was calling it a 30 mil float, but it was trading like it was on air. And I knew immediately there's no
Oh,
way it's a 30 mil float.
it was
There's no
30K.
way. It was like 30K. This is insane. So I just happily overrode my system. I'm not trading this one. I don't believe it. I
Yeah,
don't
that's
like it.
experience because that doesn't
Yeah, that's
trade
just
like a,
experience.
yep, that's not
Right.
a 1 million float. I mean, that is a 1
Yeah,
million or below.
right. I forget the name of the ticker. It's on my Twitter somewhere. But anyways, so I avoided that one. And other ones I discretionally got out. Uh, it was when it before it blew high a day, and I was just like, look, it's coiling a little bit. I'm just gonna. It's the end of the year. I wanted to conserve my profits,
Yeah.
so I avoided another max loss. So I avoided like maybe three or four max losses. So I did not deal with that drawdown like everybody else did.
You keep saying you avoided max losses. That makes me beg the question: like, is every time you take a
Yeah.
loss, is it max loss or is it
No,
1R? Like, why do you keep saying I'm avoiding max loss? Because you keep going at
when
it.
I'm
Is that part of it?
forced, yeah, if I'm forced to exit my position, that would be considered a max loss, meaning max pain. It got to my level where I can no longer hold it anymore. It's the most money I could risk, and I have to cut it. So that's the most amount of money I can maximum lose on that trade that day. So we call it a max loss. Um, and I didn't take many much
Oh,
of
it's
those
my.
during that.
You said it's
Yeah,
one. Sorry. My
yeah.
side broke up for a second. You said you call that a
Mhm.
what?
Max loss. When I take the maximum
Okay.
amount of money that I'm going to lose on that trade that day, I have the same amount of max money that I can lose on any trade. And if it hits my stop
Okay.
loss, that's essentially I call it a max loss. If I have to stop out,
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay.
If it hits my
That
stop,
makes
it's a
sense to me.
max. Yeah.
Because that's all the money you're willing to risk on that trade. Okay, gotcha.
Right.
Whereas some people see max loss as like if I lose 1R, it's a normal stop loss. But if I lose
Mm.
3R, that's a max loss, Like I don't want to lose
Okay.
more than 3R. But
Right.
you're saying if it hits my stop, which is part of your original plan, that means that is your max loss.
That's
Okay,
my
cool.
max. Right.
I'm glad you clarified
And it's
that
not
for
always a
me.
max. So, yeah. Sometimes it's a half of a max. You never know.
Yep, I understand that. Um, well, great, Evan. Look, man, I know people are gonna have tons of questions. They're gonna want to learn more about you. Where can they find out more about you, man?
Just follow me on Twitter at eshunk8. I haven't been posting too much lately, but I'll get back to it. Um, and that's where you can find me. Got a lot of stuff on there. If you're
Awesome,
interested in
awesome.
data, do advanced search and advanced search the keyword data on my feed, and it could get you maybe started looking into some data.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Evan, my man. I appreciate being here, helping a lot of people out by just talking to me here today. And it's always good seeing a friend, bro.
Great to see you, Alex. Happy to always come back here, and I'll see you again soon.
Absolutely.